The audio interface is perhaps the most important piece of equipment in your home studio. That's why I decided to make a new buyer's guide for 2020. Audio interfaces vary greatly depending on your budget. The better ones are more durable, more reliable, they have longer warranty periods, and just simply they're better overall. Fortunately, in the year 2020, even the cheaper audio interfaces are pretty darn good as far as frequency response linearity and noise levels are concerned. So, here are the ones that I would personally buy if I were in the market for a new audio interface. First up, I want to recommend the Audient Evo 4 or the Evo 8. Either of these interfaces will work well. They have stellar reviews. They are under $200 each. I think that the Evo 8 is probably the biggest steal because it has 4 outputs, or rather 2 stereo channels, along with 4 microphone preamps and 2 headphone outputs. But if you're on a tight budget, then the Evo 4 will satisfy you. Another good option is the ortuO M2 or the ortuO M4. I recommend these over the Audient if you need a MIDI input. So if you're working with keyboards or you want a MIDI controller, then definitely check out either the M2 or the M4. The other impressive feature is the ultra low latency. And then of course we have the Focusrite Scarlett series, their cheapest interface being the Solo, or if you are really poor, Behringer Euphoria UM2 for $48. If all you can afford is something that's under $50, I have heard this is not too shabby. If you can spare a little more change, then the Behringer Euphoria UMC 22 is the better one to get. My recommendation, of course, though, is just to save up some more money and go with either the Audient or the ortuO. Next up is the $300 to $500 category. That's what I'm considering a medium budget audio interface. Zoom LiveTrack L8. I like this because it's a mixing board and you can record standalone, or you can hook it up to a USB and it becomes an audio interface. It also has cell phone recording capability. It can also be portable. If you need more inputs, then the L12 is a good option, but it's not portable like the L8. Another interesting option is if you prefer to go the ADAT route, the RME Digiface USB for $500 is a good way to start things. Personally, I prefer the PCI interface. Another one that came out of left field this year is the Solid State Logic SSL2 and SSL2 Plus interfaces. Now, the differences between the two interfaces are obvious when you look at the back. You have more inputs and outputs, mainly MIDI, and there's an extra line out. Now, curiously, on the SSL2, they put quarter-inch outputs, but then on the more expensive interface, they added RCA. Maybe that's a space thing, but I would have preferred just having quarter-inch balance outputs for both. Also, there's an additional headphone output. All this for $280. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. The voiceover that you're hearing right now was recorded with the Audient ID14, and that's the one that I use and have been using for the past 4 years. I've been happy with it, and it's only given me one major issue in 4 years, so I can only say listen to some of my most recent recordings and you can hear how awesome the Audient ID14 is, or read through these 165 reviews and you'll understand what everybody else is talking about. Moving on, the Audient ID22, although it is considered to be an old interface, it's actually better than the ID14 that I'm using right now. It has more inputs, it has more outputs, It's a solid audio interface, and they dropped the price. Originally, I believe this was a $700 interface until they came out with the ID44. So now it's $500 for the same quality. All right, now we are in the over $500 category. So this one basically goes to the moon as far as I'm concerned. Once you go over the $500 mark, you're pretty much looking into the high-end category. So to start off with, the one that I would personally go with, the RME Babyface Pro FS. Rock solid stability, drivers that work with even older operating systems, software preamp control, and room for expansion. If you have a lot of money, the RME Fireface UFX, and they come in a variety of different data interfaces. This one has USB 3 and Thunderbolt built in. And overall, it's just an excellent interface. Again, the latency and the stability of the RME brand, I believe, is unmatched because the company writes their own drivers. The fact that they support even their old, out-of-production interfaces says a lot to me about this company. No, they're not the cheapest, but you're going to get a solid product that will work for years to come. Speaking of which, every RME product has a 5-year warranty. That can't be said about all interfaces. And finally, this one is a little cheaper at $1,350, but the ins and outs have been drastically reduced compared to the Fireface. As I was saying earlier, they also sell a PCI interface, technically PCIe, that allows you to use a bunch of different ADAT, ins and outs, and if you need even more, you can put multiple HDSPE cards into your computer. Okay, moving on, we have the Lynx AES16E. I'm starting on the cheap end here. Lynx have excellent quality conversion, and just like RME, they have really good audio drivers. I can't stress the importance of drivers enough. If the drivers aren't working, you get clicks and pops, and in worst case scenarios, crashes. Their Aurora N is just, I believe that this is considered to be like the reference standard for conversion. I personally put a bunch of audio through Aurora N converters, and it wasn't until like the 10th pass, which I would never do for real audio, but the 10th pass of audio finally started to sound a little different from the source. But I could still push it if I really needed to until like the 15th pass. All the while the noise floor remained really, really low. I would hope so for $3,500, right? It gets a little bit more expensive though. Oh yes, the Apogee Symphony 16x16 Mark II, including Pro Tools HD, $6,000. This one's for my rich viewers out there. Or the people who want really, really fancy toys in your studio, pretty toys. But seriously, the Apogee interfaces sound really good from what I've been told. They look nice, and they have a cool name. If you don't have that kind of scratch, then they just released a new desktop interface called the Apogee Symphony Desktop 10x14 USB-C. And it runs you $1,500. And then finally, if I didn't talk about universal audio, a lot of you guys would be like, Adam, you really left a big one off the chart. I personally am still not a fan of this older technology. Yes, the tin looks nice and modern. Don't get me wrong. It's a cool looking little interface. But they're using technology from the time I was still in my 20s. Again, cool, and I'm glad that the price has really come down over the years, but it's just hard to convince me to use DSP that is 12 years old. But you know what? The good thing is they do have one called the Solo that's $500. Now it only comes with one DSP chip, so you really can't get much processing power out of it. But still, you can at least say you have a UAD interface, I guess. You can get that either in USB or Thunderbolt. And what I would say the higher end people would buy is the Universal Audio Apollo X8P for $3,300. You get a bunch of different plugins. Plus, this is rack mountable. This is the one to get if you're going to really get into Universal Audio hardware, as far as I'm concerned. Or what I would do is get one of these satellite USB Octos. Get yourself another audio interface and just get this. Or the quad. Either one will get you there. Because guess what? Universal Audio plugins actually are quite good. But again, the workflow, the processing power, 12-year-old hardware.